So I read a comment just to let's get everybody up to speed real quick. I read a comment on my murder hobo video today that inspired me to revisit. So in my murder hobo video, actually, let's get all the context. All right. Let's get all the context. Is a term usually derogatory that describes a player or a character that always resolves issues with violence. Generally, a murder hobo has no attachments to the game world that they're playing in. Every NPC in it is there to be killed and looted. A good example of this would be blowing up Megaton, wiping out Tenpenny Tower, and then killing all the friendly ghouls right outside. They're called murder hobos because murder, kill everything, hobo, no home, no community, no attachment to the world. You can see why this would be a problem and why this would be considered derogatory if you have one player that is a murder hobo and the rest are trying to immerse themselves in this world. But murder hobo is still a style of play, and while the DM may want to tell a story in an immersive world and the players just want to kill things, neither group is wrong, but someone's going to have to adapt. Now follow the channel. All right. The key takeaway, the players, plural, want to do something and the DM wants to do something else. This is why I refer to it as a style of play. That's going to come up here in a moment. So this comment, which is what inspired me to revisit this. So how come this video, neither style of play is wrong, applies to murder hobos, but not to people who can role play with a mute or disabled character? I never said not to play a disabled character. That's kind of misrepresentation. Your video on that was still not objective advice, very focused on personal preference to what you like to role play with. So first of all, everything I say is based off what I like to role play. All the advice that I give is based off of experience. And you know, I mean, I get like, watching other people's D&D games, sure. So my key response, or my response to this is, I said that players just want to kill things. So I'm referring to a group of players that want to achieve something. And that objective is to kill stuff. Playing a mute character is one person forcing their needs on other people. And just a caveat to that, if the entire party is okay with something, anything, no matter what, I'm for it. If the entire party is okay with something, then it's not disruptive. Then I don't think it's disruptive. So we're going to revisit the mute characters. So I just want to specify that if the entire party is on board, when I said murder hobo was a play style, that means that if one person is trying to murder hobo playstyle and 3 other people are trying to play a different way, then the murder hobo then the murder hobo is wrong. Like they're being disruptive to what these 3 want. Majority rule. But if 4 murder hobos or 3 murder hobos are in a game and one person's like, I just want to, role play, this person may end up being disruptive. It's so. D&D is a cooperative game. It's a cooperative game. All right. You have to work together. You can't. There's no correct way to play D&D. Right. This is just like they were criticizing my advice, not because I never said that there's a right or wrong way to play D&D. Okay, so let's watch this video for context. What always ends up happening in games like this is it kind of devolves into a game of charades, a game within a game, trying to figure out what this character wants. And before you know it, they're just talking out of character the entire time, which is horrible. If you can't play the character without talking out of character, you probably drew up a bad character. And I'm of course talking about players without disabilities playing these types of characters. If you're a player with a disability or playing with somebody with a disability, this is an entirely different situation that's outside of the scope of this video. All right, so like that line right there, I think is enough to just completely. I mean, that person. I mean, if you, I may be misunderstanding what that person was trying to say, but If you have a legitimate disability, like you can't speak or you can't, whatever, then then we work around that. This video is for people who are deliberately making it more difficult on your party. There are 3 different kinds of mute characters that I want to talk about in this video, each with its own set of difficulties. The first and most egregious are the completely speechless characters, the characters that do not say a word. Maybe you're trying to make the strong silent type, like Sphinx from Gone in 60 Seconds, or the Chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Those characters are great in a movie, but trying to play them in a D&D game or any other tabletop role-playing game doesn't work. And the reason for this is the character can't communicate with the party and can't communicate with NPCs. Any information that they end up gathering can't be moved onto the party, so it just sort of hits a dead end, which means they won't be the ones gathering the information, the party will. They're effectively a statue. When you draw up a character like this, you're basically saying, I don't want to roleplay with NPCs or the party, wake me up when initiative starts. Which is fine if that's the kind of game that's being played, but more often than not, that's not the case. From my I did say, if that's the kind of game, that's fine. Experience, these types of characters don't last more than a game session, maybe less, before the player starts seeing the other players having fun and role-playing and wanting to join in. They may attempt to salvage their character by attempting to play charades with the party or just talking out of character completely, and you can understand why this would be an issue. The second kind of... Okay, so I may have changed my mind since then. If you're going to play a mute character and you want to do things like, if you want to talk out of character, but you want to describe what your character is doing, I may be okay with that. When did I post this? This video is almost a year old. I think if you want to play a mute character and you want to talk out of character in a way to where you just describe what your character is doing, I think I'm open to having my mind changed. I'm not entirely convinced, but I may be open to have my mind changed on that one. It's not pretty. It takes an experienced player. I'll at the very least. One that doesn't share a language with the party. When you play a character that doesn't share a language with the rest of the party, you're effectively playing the first type of mute character, unless you have a translator. If you're playing a character like this and your translator is an object or some sort of magic item or a spell, it's a non-issue. It's just an extra step to your roleplay that can be taken away at some time. However, if your character's clarity, part 2, if you have a translator, like I've heard of people having a parrot on their shoulder that talks for them, that's nothing. That's like I just said, it's negligible. Or like he just said, it's negligible. Or an object, another creature, then that becomes a problem because that creature needs to be played by somebody. These characters act as your character's mouthpiece whenever you want to say something to the party. But these types of characters don't work in a tabletop setting. And if your character's how do you guys watch these videos? I talk so slow. Then your roleplay with the party and NPCs is entirely dependent upon them, which means they have to be with you anytime you want to roleplay. And they can get dragged into conversations that they don't necessarily want to be a part of. And if they're not around, you're effectively the first type of mute character. From my experience with this type of character relationship, it eventually devolves into the translator just saying, all right, I'm translating everything they say, and then the player just talks normal, which adds unnecessary steps and completely defeats the purpose. And the third type... Okay, I stand by that. If it's an object or something, then that's fine. But if another player or the DM has to translate for you, then I feel like that's just, I still think that's disruptive. During probably the most common one that we've all seen and maybe even played, the one that grunts one-word sentences. We have all seen it. The barbarian that walks into the tavern, he's too big to fit through the doorways. This massive, muscular, half-orc barbarian walks up to the barkeep and says, "Grog, ale." The novelty of these characters wears off quick, and it eventually becomes a game within a game trying to figure out what it is your character is trying to say. Danger. Grog smash. Ouch. Loot. Torch. Stop it. And obviously, I'm speaking in broad terms. Stop it. Stop it. Get some help. So this is like the entire point of the video. All right. Listen closely. And obviously, I'm speaking in broad terms. There are some games where this could work, whether it be a dungeon crawl or maybe a one shot. But keep in mind, making it more difficult to roleplay with your character in a role-playing game is dumb. Thank you for watching. I hope. Okay. So that last line like sums it up. I stand by all that. Can I turn it up? I'm sorry. It's already over. That last line, I feel like sums it up. There are some games where this can work. Boom. There are some games where this can work. All right. If the whole party's on board, if you have fun with it, there are exceptions. I literally can't cover every single exception. There are some games where this can work, but the key takeaway is do not make it more difficult to play with your character. I mean, that was the point of that video. I messed up because I wanted to read the comments of that. There's one comment in particular. Well, not one, but one type of comment that I want to address. And that's Kenku. Kenku don't have their own voice. Now, a lot of people will take that as I don't know how to freaking talk. Stop. Watch the video again. Stop it. Kenku grow up the same way as everyone else. They don't have a unique way of growing up. I mean, culturally, I should say. Kenku learn a language the exact same way as everyone else. There is no reason that they shouldn't know a word that anyone else knows. The only difference is they don't have their own voice. When they say a word, they have to say it the same way that they heard it. So if they learned what a longsword is from an orc, when they say the word longsword, they say it in an orc accent, right? They don't have their own voice. That's the only thing about Kenku. They don't have their own voice. Now, obviously, that's a challenge for people that play Kenku because they're going to have to like come up with accents and a backstory and where they learn these phrases and everything. So they may speak, they may have different accents. They may have to throw out different accents. It's a great race to play for people who have like a solid, like a voice actor. A voice actor could be great, but they don't know less words than anyone else. They don't know less words than anyone because they grow up the exact same way. They hear the same stuff they learn language the same way as everyone else. They hear people say it and then they say it themselves. The difference is that they don't have their own voice. They have to mimic what they hear. So sign language would be, so if you wanted to play a character, so if you started using sign language at the table and the players didn't know sign language, they would either have to learn it or you would have to just like translate. All right, here we go. Here's a good one. I can't disagree more. I just read the first line and I'm excited. All right, here we go. I can't disagree more with the logic of this video. This is going to be good. Buckle up. All right. You use very rigid and limited definitions of good and bad roleplay, with little to no thought given to context. Oh boy, this is spicy. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paulicus. You use very rigid and limited definitions of good and bad roleplay, with little to no thought given to context, player ability, group dynamics, or creative in-game thing. Oh, I actually did. I've read this before a month ago. I read this. I knew this sounded familiar. I knew that icon was familiar. I've read this. Player ability, group dynamics, or creative in-game thinking to work around these issues. Some of these arguments are outright strawmen. Strawman? Who am I strawmanning? Who am I strawmanning? What's a strawman? It's a debate term. I believe it means creating an argument, creating your opponent's argument for them, and then attacking that representation that you created. I don't have a good example. If you said, I don't like D&D, and I was like, so you don't like the idea of creating characters, you don't like the idea of rolling dice, so you don't like tabletop RPGs. And then I proceeded to tear down that argument. It's like, no, I didn't say I didn't like tabletop RPGs. I said I don't like D&D. Okay, all right, let me get to this. I agree that mute characters are a significant challenge and should typically only be tackled by experienced or confident role players. But this video does tragically little to showcase the potential of these characters. It serves more to generate controversy than actually serve as constructive purpose. And I suspect this may have been done to generate views more than anything. In my opinion, this is poorly done and worthy of an update with fuller context or retraction. Hey, here we are. I'm doing it right now, Paul. You didn't ask a question or present a counterpoint. Honestly, I'm not sure what I was going for with this comment. You didn't ask a question or present a counterpoint. I would guess I just didn't know what his problem was specifically. Clearly, he never responded to me. This was a month ago. I don't know what to say to that because he didn't really address anything. Very rigid, limited definitions of good or bad role play. No thought given to context, playability. That's kind of on ad hom. I agree that they're a challenge and should be tackled by experienced or confident role players, but it does little to showcase the potential. I mean, he didn't present any potential either. It definitely doesn't serve to generate controversy. I don't even know what the rest of that is. A mute skeleton that carries around paper and pencil to write and also draw a stick in the dirt. It's terrible. I mean, writing a messages and passing it around for everybody to read is just as bad. There are many ways to make up for this, but she took the message in minor illusion cantrip to allow her to easily communicate. So this comment right here, this character can't talk, but we found a workaround. Now your character can talk. It doesn't matter how they talk. So when I was talking about this video, just because they don't use their throat, the vibrations in their throat to talk, doesn't mean that they can't talk. I mean, if they're using a cantrip or message or telepathy or sign language or a parrot, if they're able to communicate with you, that's it. It's done. Then you're done. Like, it's fine. This video was to address people that make it difficult to roleplay with. That's the key there. It would be a temporary curse. That's fine. That's fine. If you have to spend a session for whatever reason, like there can be novelty to it. A mute aberrant mind sorcerer, so they talk telepathically. It's fine. I had an idea for a mute character that summoned a sprite to be a translator. That's the second kind. It's fine. I actually agree a little bit with the commenter. A good role player describing how their character moves to express thoughts. I feel like that's fine and how a mute person would actually communicate. A good role player describing how their character moves. Yeah, I mean, like I said that from the first example. I'm open to have my mind changed about character, but see, the issue with it is you're always talking out of character. So that one's a bit of a slippery slope, but it's doable. What's wrong with talking out of character though? I don't understand the question. What's wrong with talking out of character? I mean, if you don't have a problem with talking out of character, it's fine. Surprised you didn't include the most infuriating semi-mute of all, the Kenku. The Kenku is not a mute character. I already talked about that. My character writes everything down. So me as a player writes everything down and I have all the other players read the notes. Yeah. So like, so here's the difference. We're standing outside the cave. All right, go scout. The scout comes back. There are 3 goblins in there. Or there's a dragon in that cave. Okay, we should probably go around. Versus, all right, he said there's a dragon in the cave. Thank you. That's gonna be fun. Doing that for 3 months for this campaign is gonna be fun. I can't wait. Right? That's all I was getting out with the video. That's all. Like, let's do that for 3 months. Like, let's do that every week. I can't wait. Let's do that every time your character talks. I want to read a note and then translate. We're gonna have fun with that. Yeah, you guys know what I was getting at, right? So much fun. Is it just mute characters that you have a problem with, or is it other disabilities too, such as blindness or deafness? I don't have a problem. Like, did you, Bloom? I feel like you didn't listen to a word I just said. Chat, it's like, do me a favor. All right, I want to make sure Bloom is the outlier here. I want to make sure Bloom is the one that's having trouble interpreting this, and not the rest of the people that are listening. Do I have a problem with mute characters? I should poll it, shouldn't I? Do I have a problem with mute characters? Just answer that question for me, chat. Yes. No. He's being facetious? Okay, yeah, probably. No. No problem with mute characters. Okay. You have a problem with players holding up the game. Klein coming in with like... Klein coming in explaining it like it is. I have a problem with people... making it more difficult to roleplay with you. I have a problem with people making it more difficult to roleplay with you. Roleplay is already a challenge. Acting is a challenge, right? Pretending to be another character or putting on a voice and all that's already a challenge. You don't need to make it more difficult for me or for you or for the rest of the party. All right, moving on. I'm playing a Kenku. God whispers in my ear. So I only speak through fourth wall breaks and movie quotes. Okay. I only speak through fourth wall breaks and movie quotes. I don't know. Maybe for a one shot, I'm all aboard. For a one shot, sure. For an entire campaign, I don't know if I could handle this for an entire campaign. I understand it's a bad idea to make a character mute. Don't make a guy who's socially awkward say the exact words. This is very important. I definitely want to address this. If you're a person who's socially awkward and you don't want to roleplay, those are the people. Like, look, he even gives an example. Just let him say, I asked the bugbear to let me through. I'm totally okay with that. That is just fine. If you're not comfortable doing a voice or talking in character, this is fine. This is why I said the first type of roleplay is just fine. Like describing what your character does and saying, I asked the merchant if I can buy the sword, or things like that's just fine. It's totally fine. You can do, as far as I'm concerned, you can do that for the rest of your TTRPG career, and I'll be okay with it. Back in second edition, anyone insisted on playing a mute character, I made them point out the one in the party who was the translator. I hate it already. The person playing mute had to write down what. Oh my gosh! All right, I'm gonna start this one from the beginning. Back in my second edition days, if anyone insisted on playing a mute character, I made them point out the one in the party who was the translator for their way of communicating. The person playing mute had to write down what they wanted to say and hand it over to the DM, and the translator had to roll intelligence check to try and decipher it. If failed, hilarity ensued because of random word rolls. God help me. Oh man, this all right. I'm done. This is going to turn into a roast.